Well, apparently Neil Druckmann from Naughty Dog doesn't think that we should bet on The Last of Us Part 3 happening, which is a bit odd considering what he said the last time the subject came up. But when I look at the timeline here, it actually does seem like The Last of Us Part 3 could not find its footing, so they've just shelved it indefinitely. In a recent interview with Variety, he said he was waiting for a question about The Last of Us Part 3. He kind of knew they were going to ask about it, and he said, quote, "I guess the only thing I would say is, don't bet on there being more of Last of Us. This could be it." So just a quick timeline, I think, to help out here, because you're like, well, when's the last time this came up? In February of 2024, a video titled Grounded 2, Making The Last of Us Part 2 was published on Naughty Dog's YouTube channel. At the very end, the subject of the third game comes up, and Neil makes it very clear. It's very uncertain at that point.
About The Last of Us and would there be any more stories or something. And I mentioned, like, you know, we have written a story that takes place after Last of Us 2 that stars Tommy. And I hope one day we get to make it. And the headlines across the industry were like, Naughty Dog has outlined Last of Us Part 3. And that's actually wrong. It was always a small story. It was never like a full title. At the time, we had higher priorities at Naughty Dog, was like to fix our pipeline, to fix work-life balance issues. Just based on where we were, I didn't want to prioritize this story, so that story was shelved. And I still believe one day it will see the light of day. I don't know if it'll be a game or a show, TBD. First game had such a clean concept of like the unconditional love a parent feels for their child. The second one, once we landed on this idea of the pursuit of justice at any cost, justice for the ones you love, it felt like, oh, there's a clean concept here, and there's a through line from the first game about love. If we never get to do it again, this is a fine ending point. And right, last bite of the apple, the story's done. The great thing about working at Naughty Dog is that we don't have to. It's always like, we would love another Last of Us, but if you guys feel like are passionate about something else, we'll support this other thing. Very privileged position to be in. I never take that for granted. I've been just thinking about, okay, is there a concept there? And for now years, I haven't been able to find that concept. But recently that's changed. And I don't have a story, but I do have that concept that to me is as exciting as 1, as exciting as 2, is its own thing, and yet has this through line for all 3. So it does feel like there's probably one more chapter to the story.
And it ends on a big maybe. It doesn't seem like this very strong, yes, The Last of Us Part 3 is coming. It's more like, I've got a concept, we'll see what happens. And then 1 year later is where we are now. So it's been a year since he said that, and now he's saying, don't bet on it. He's like, this could be it. There could be no more. Now, while this feels like a pretty negative forecast that, you know, TLU 3 is not happening, I really think this whole plot thickens when you look at how he spoke to Uncharted. He didn't really hold back, and now he's being kind of vague. In a GameIndustry.biz article about Naughty Dog being done with Uncharted, Druckmann said the following: "For us, Uncharted was insanely successful. Uncharted 4 was one of our best-selling games, and we were able to put our final brushstrokes on that story and say that we're done, we're moving on." That's pretty firm. That's like, we're done. We're moving on. I don't feel like we're getting that right now. Now, before we consider the various possibilities of why he's not being specific, I actually think there are a lot of possible things going on, more than just, well, TLU 3 is canceled. Just consider this. This is in the wake of them canceling the Last of Us factions. It's also in the wake of them announcing Intergalactic. Now, in the same clip in that video where he talks about how he's got a concept for TLU 3, he also talks about how they don't have to do it. If the team gets passionate about something else, they can make it. They don't have to make the third game. Well, Intergalactic could really seal the deal for me as a sign that the dev team just moved on. They didn't really have a problem leaving TLU after they shipped TLU 2. They just built this very different IP. I mean, if you've seen the trailers, Intergalactic doesn't look like it's going to be anything like The Last of Us. And given the timeline, at that point, they had spent over a decade in The Last of Us world. So here are the 3 possibilities of what I think could be going on first, and I do think this is the most likely. I think that they couldn't find a way to make The Last of Us Part 3 that really honored and kept that story through line strong from 1 to 2. With Joel gone, it may have just felt too thin. He even says in the video that his concept was going to be its own thing as they tried to maintain that through line. So it could have been about a completely different character if it was going to be its own thing. I don't even know if they were going to have you playing as Ellie. in the way that he described it, that was probably unlikely. So maybe they just felt like it wasn't going to be strong enough, and they've just decided, you know what, shelve this thing indefinitely, we're not making it. The second possibility is he's really just trying to make room for Intergalactic to get the focus. That could be why he is being vague. He's not firmly saying, no, we're done, the way that he did with Uncharted. He makes it seem like it could still happen. He kind of leaves dangling there a little bit of doubt. But it also seems like he doesn't want that to be the focus of the interviews. Like, he kind of anticipates the question. He's kind of dreading it. Now, he could be dreading it because he's got bad news, right? It's like, well, I'm dreading this question because TLOU 3 is not happening. Or he could be dreading it because right now they want the focus to be on Intergalactic. It's what they're passionate about. It's what they wanted to ship. They don't have anything to really say about TLOU 3, again, if it's still just his concept. Now, the last and final possibility is maybe they still just don't know what to do. Even if they started working on The Last of Us Part 3 right now, it probably wouldn't land until, 2030. That's 10 years after they shipped Part 2. That might just feel too long to finally deliver your third game, your third installment, an entire decade later. He also indicated that shelved Tommy story could turn into anything, a game, a show, and he said TBD. With the success of the TV show, that could be playing a factor here. Maybe they're trying to navigate furthering the story beyond what happens at the end of TLOU 2, and they would rather do that in the medium of a show. Because if the dev team moved on and they're like, hey, we don't want to do this anymore, we're going to move on to other IPs, maybe they want the story to continue but think it's better handled by a TV show. And I would say, do it. Move on. As much as I wanted to see a redemption arc for Ellie in the third game, I got really very frustrated by her character in the second game. Even Neil's concept, it didn't sound like they would do that. It didn't sound like they would have you picking up the story with Ellie. And the last thing I want them to do is to be forced to make a game that they don't want to make. We all know how games like that turn out, and it's not good. So don't bet on any more of The Last of Us, but given Naughty Dog's history and quality, I would certainly bet on them bringing more great games in the future. But those are just my thoughts. I'd love to hear yours. Leave a comment below, and make sure you hit subscribe and the like button so I can see you in the next video.